Joining us now, Chief Scientific Officer at the Wellness Company, Dr. Peter McCullough. Dr. McCullough, should this study regarding the hepatitis B vaccine and autism change the way we think about the hepatitis B vaccine?
It's certainly spurred us to think more broadly about vaccines. Remember, hepatitis B vaccine is not given alone. It's given in combinations in almost all the administrations. And the question on the table is, could combination vaccination in some infants, could it be a risk factor for allergic diseases and neuropsychiatric diseases?
And I'm wondering, when you get this type of information, how it affects the vaccine schedule. Is there a review process that occurs retroactively, or is this just the type of thing that we think about going forward and adding these vaccines to subsequent schedules?
Yeah, I would love to see the vaccine panel be a part of a broader initiative to evaluate vaccines in combination. Remember, they're only approved and tested alone. There are some fixed combinations now, or 3 or 4 different vaccines in a single vial. But we haven't studied, like at age 12 to 15 months, there's 16 different vaccines given on the schedule. That's never been tested. People are starting to raise the question, Matt, is it safe to do that? As a medical doctor, if I gave somebody 16 medicines at once, for sure they'd get a side effect.
I am wondering how you deal with that in the context of the scientific method, where each different vaccine given is a different variable. What's the way you go about doing reliable, rigorous controlled testing in that type of an environment where so much gets put together?
If we could, we'd do large prospective, double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trials, and they would be multi-factor, multi-level. You know, the quick approach right now is just to study what happens to children who take no vaccines. And historically, that's been about 2.5% of American children. Recently, a study from Mawson and colleagues in Florida, Medicaid children, 49,000 children, indicate about 10% don't have any visits for vaccines. So it must be maybe a much larger group to study as a control group. They don't take any vaccines at all. What happens in them compared to their vaccinated counterparts?
Yeah, and then you have the whole issue of, is the Medicaid population a self-selected population that has its own externalities that you have to be able to control for? One of the things that will really irk my audience is the sense that there was a cover-up here, that the data got bad for the vaccine manufacturers when the children got older and some of these conditions of autism started to present, and so they just cleaved that older population out of the study. Exposing something like that, how should it leave Americans to think about the data that's been coming out of the CDC for the last 10 years?
We need what's considered, these broad safety databases. So all the companies should actually disclose all of their data. A great concern recently about the vaccine safety data link, which is from HMOs, largely Kaiser, that had very good granular data. RFK recently said that the CDC is, in a sense, kind of erased that database. So we may have to start from scratch. People aren't being honest because many within the CDC view themselves as vaccine promoters, and they don't want to see any type of investigation into any safety problem with vaccines.
Start from scratch is going to sound so scary to expecting parents or parents of young children, because they see these schedules and they say, gosh, I want to be able to trust the things that have been subject to longitudinal data review and analysis will be safe for my children. I'll ask you again, I think I've asked you the question before, but where do parents go who just want to know what the true science is that isn't shaded by a particular vaccine manufacturer's profit motive?
There is a manual, kind of a vaccine by vaccine manual. First author is Jeff Barkey in California. And look up his book on vaccines. It does walk through them. But here are a few principles, Matt. When vaccines are given separately, they're far safer than giving in a combination. And if they're given later in life by children who really, have a compelling need for the vaccine, it's safer. So, we may be looking at a break where it's not every child has to receive every vaccine. It may be much more individualized in the future.
when I see circumstances like this where Secretary Kennedy is getting important information that had been concealed from the public into the public square, I never quite know whether to feel relieved by that or even more frightened, because I am grateful that we seem to be directionally correct and making progress, but I'm worried about the fidelity of all of the other information that's been relied upon. Do you have confidence that Secretary Kennedy is going to be able to right the ship on this with the smart people he's surrounded himself with?
I don't know. Remember the CDC, for instance, thousands upon thousands of employees and the FDA, they largely view themselves as vaccine promotional units. They've never been asked to give a fair review on a vaccine. That's the problem. People have taken an intellectual stake that all vaccines are good and that vaccine promotion is good and any vaccine hesitancy by anybody is bad. Well, that large presumption injects bias, and we can't get a fair look at what's going on.
Well, it seems like we're starting to, and it's revealing and uncomfortable and maybe hopeful all at the same time. Dr. Peter McCullough, Chief Scientist of the Wellness Group, thanks as always for coming on and sharing your expertise.
Thank you.